thank you so much for coming out to Deep Dive DL. Today we are going to be speaking with Linda Beilke, and we're also going to be speaking with Chelsey Malstrom. I just want to point out before we start, one thing that is really special about both of these women is that they not only have these amazing crafts that they're just so wildly talented with, they also are really big on educating others and building community around what they've done. And so I'm really excited to talk to them and learn more. So welcome, Linda. Thank you for coming out.
Good morning, Sarah.
So Linda is both an artist and an illustrator. And can you tell us a little bit about your art? Because you work with quite a few mediums.
Well, I first start out and say that I started with an art degree, and then I got an art education degree, taught art for 40 some years, and with that, my art has evolved and changed, and I look at exploring different mediums as a challenge. So my art, somebody might see something and say, well, that's different, or I haven't seen that before, but I'm hoping that there's a thread of me that shows through, and I think it does. My art is based on my observation of nature, people, different things I see. My husband always says, are you paying attention? And because I'm always taking pictures, I'm looking, and I think that's just where my mind goes. I'm always looking for opportunities, how light hits an object, the positive space, the negative space, how things work together. And so my art is quite varied in the subject matter, the theme, but it's based on drawing. I start out with drawing or drawing with a paintbrush, and I think that shows through. So I probably answered several of your questions right there.
And you brought a piece today. Could you share that with us and maybe just walk through a little bit of your process and how it comes together?
Okay, well, this is a special painting for me, and when I was thinking about coming today and I was asked to bring one, and I thought, they're all special to me because they have a meaning. Where did I see this? This is a butterfly that is flying right in front of a wild rose. I was biking along East Shore Drive, and my intent was to photograph things that I saw. And so I set my bike down and I saw this wild rose. I got crouched down in the ditch taking a picture of this, and as I was just about to take the picture, the hummingbird flew within an inch of my face, and I thought, oh, I hope my finger's on, in the right location. So I clicked it, and the photograph was good, but it wasn't, an award-winning photograph. But I thought I wanted to paint how it felt with the fluttering of the wings and the bright flower in the sunshine. And so this is watercolor. And as we had talked previously before this, that my art is also in layers. I'm very interested in line, in colors and layers, how light affects different objects in different ways, and then trying to balance it out with the darks and the darker values too.
Mm-hmm. When you're doing this, I'm just curious because I look at a lot of your pieces and I feel like that's part of your distinctive style is you have that balance of the light and the dark, but it evokes emotion and the movement and stuff with all of your work. Are you thinking about that when you're putting your art together? Does it just happen?
Well, I think prior to deciding what I'm going to paint, if it moves me, then I know that there's going to be a passion there for me. I do a lot of commissions, and sometimes I think, somebody might ask me to do something that I might not have a passion for. Mm-hmm. So then I immerse myself in that until I find something that I, really like and enjoy. Because I think if you're doing something where you don't have a passion, it shows.
Mm-hmm. Can you give us an example of what you mean by you immerse yourself in it?
I take photos, I look online, I go to shows. I do sketches. I'm currently doing a commission that has birds in it, and I made a large sketch, and the person said, oh, I think I'd like them closer together. There's two birds. And so then I set that aside, and then I did another sketch. And I had thought we'd communicated, quite well before, but I think the ideas were changing, and that was fine. So the second sketch I really liked, and so she had some changes, and she said, is that okay? Can you just change it? And I said, I can, or I can redraw it. So I actually took that drawing and I created a painting of it. And I was going to bring it today, but it's about 90% done. And those of you who are artists or in one way or another, you know that you don't want your work to show until you feel that it's finished.
All right, and then you have worked a lot with education and bringing groups together and stuff. Can you tell us a little bit about that and kind of what drives you to create those environments for people?
Well, I think everybody has a making spirit within them, a creative spirit. If it is, making wine, if it is cooking, if it's drawing. And while I was teaching art, I felt like, I would always have a few kids who'd be resistant. Well, I'm not good at this. And I would always use an analogy that I thought they could maybe relate to. Like the first time you picked up a basketball, were you able to make a basket? And they say no. And I said, well, what about a layup? And they said, well, no. And I said the same thing with art. We are not here all to become artists, but we're here to gain an appreciation for art, to build fine motor skills, to communicate. And, I would describe, and we would talk about our world without anything visual, like picking out your clothes, picking out a car, different, app illustrations. And I think they started to realize that art is not just something that hangs on a wall. So with that, I feel like when I'm working with groups of kids or adults, I feel like there's always some way to reach them. Just keep talking to them, finding out what their interests are. And, I usually am able to find something that there can be a connection.
Well, and I love that you describe it as a making spirit, because there's so many people that they're like, I'm not creative, I'm not this, but making that broadens it and opens all these opportunities, and also that you're encouraging that exploration in people. So speaking of new things that you are doing, you've recently illustrated a book. Do you want to tell us how that all came to be?
Well, I think normally when someone is an illustrator, they have gone to school for graphic design, they have an illustrative degree, and I was approached by someone who I know quite well, Karen Daggett, who is the author of the book, and she said, I would like for you to illustrate my book. She said, I wrote it back in the 80s, and I've always thought I'd like it illustrated, but she said I was waiting for the right person to be, and I told her, I said, well, thank you, Karen, that's very kind of you, but I'm not an illustrator, because there's a lot that goes into that. And she said, no, you are my illustrator. And I thought, wow, she has confidence in me. So we started out with just a few drawings, and I got hooked, and at that point she said, this is exactly what I'm looking for, beyond what I knew I wanted. And so originally it was going to be 17 images, full page images. And then she said, well, I'd like images that show the seasons or what's happening within the forest, that aren't just illustrating what's happening within the story at that time. So we went to 97 images. And I've done a lot of commissions, and most of them go fairly smoothly. And so I look at this kind of like that, because it's a give and take and it's a communication. And I felt like after the first couple of drawings, it went so smoothly. Like it was meant to be, and it was fun. I really enjoyed it.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the process behind it? Because I'm assuming you're not just drawing a picture, handing it off, and we're good to go.
No. So what I did is I read the book very thoroughly, and then I went in without her telling me where the images would be, and I kind of jotted down what I thought would be a good place for an image, and rather than just illustrating what the text showed, I wanted it to expand. When I was teaching, I always tried to incorporate reading books to my students, and it might be about an artist, it might be about a location, just so that they had something. And the librarian and I were very close. I would bring in lots and lots of books for them to use as reference, so that they couldn't say, I don't have any ideas. I said, just page through some books. We'd go to the library a lot. I think I just lost my train of thought. What was your question?
The process
The process, yes. So what I would do then is, once I determined where I thought the illustration should be, I would draw them out, and then I would take like a light watercolor wash and put a value on it, and then with some ink. And at that point, if I felt it, warranted showing to the artist, at first it was showing her one or two at a time. And so then I would show her, and if I got her approval, then I would take it back and watercolor it. And at that point, there was never a question, it was just done. There were a couple of them where I had to make adjustments, and I was glad I hadn't done the full watercolor. But that was a process, and then as we got going, I did 10 at a time, and just sent them off to her, because she was in another state at that point. But it really went fairly quick. We started late last fall, and we finished by February. And then the longest part was, we had another team that kind of did the layout and colored background, moving the text around. But it was in print by June, and the rest is history.
Well, congratulations, that's a huge accomplishment.
Thank you.
And the illustrations are beautiful. I'm gonna open it up to questions. Does anyone have a question?
When's the next book coming?
Well, the contract hasn't been signed, but there are discussions of more books. So I know a little bit about the book, which I'm not going to say, and so as I'm out taking photographs or thinking things or reading, I'm saying, oh, this could be part of my inspiration or that. So I'm kind of opening up the pathways for that. Thank you.
When you start with something, how much time can you put in, and then you have to say, no, I have to set that aside? I mean, do you put in an hour or 3 hours or 8 hours, and then you say, no, I need to set that aside and come back to it? Or do you just say, I'm gonna start and go until it's done?
I don't usually have a time frame for something. When I start something, I have to feel pretty excited about it. Like I started a plein air group where we go out and we paint, which is kind of putting yourself in a location where you're finding a view, you set up and you paint. And I probably get 90% of the painting done there when I'm working in my studio. It's very similar. I do about 80 to 90% of the completed artwork. Then I like to stop, put it aside. I have a ledge that I put it on, and as I'm walking by it in the house or in the studio, I have the opportunity to look at something and say, something's off or something's missing. I've had a couple commissions where the timeline got shorter, and I felt like I didn't have that time, and I felt like, that 10% might have improved it, but that was the time that I had. So sometimes I work an hour, sometimes I work 8-9 hours in a row. It just depends.
Any other questions?
When you sketch up your piece to find a perspective, dimensional and visual perspective before you really start, you had mentioned you do your sketch with a brush. Do you also use a pencil or charcoal or anything?
Well, when I started college, I was got a degree in fine arts and with a concentration in drawing and painting. And so, yes, I do a lot of pencil sketches, charcoal sketches. But recently when I've been doing plein air, I just take the paintbrush with a little bit of watered down acrylic and I just paint with that, knowing that there are going to be bees, there are going to be gnats, there's going to be, all different type of environmental issues that are going to keep me from being there a long period of time, so to shorten it up. But yeah, pencil and ink are what I like to draw with. I would often have my students draw with crayon or draw with an ink or Sharpie, because then they couldn't get to the point where they felt they needed to erase it. And I would always tell them, the mark is there, we're gonna work with it. So if it isn't exactly what you'd originally planned, that's another opportunity for creativity. Let's add something to it. And it usually worked. And the anxiety or, would calm down, and they just knew that what they drew was what they were gonna have. So, long answer for a short question.
Anyone else? Well, thank you so much for sharing with us today. I think it's so fun to hear all your ways that you're encouraging people to move forward boldly with art.
Thank you.
Is there anything that we can do as a community to support you in your art?
Well, I think Detroit Lakes is an amazing community. It's where I grew up, it's where I moved back to, and I'm very excited to see all of the arts that are here. I have a lot of groups and friends that I'm involved with the arts, so it lets me know that it's important in people's lives. If you can, if you have an interest in art, attend art shows, talk to artists about their work. If you're looking for something for your home, buy something local if you can, or, just encourage. So, thank you.
All right, well, let's give Linda a big round of applause. All right, next up is Chelsey. Just kidding. That's great. Good morning. Good morning. So I'm very excited to talk to you, and we were both talking this morning about how when we first talked about Clarity Wine Bar, you came to me and you had this dream, and it was, well, maybe it was fully fleshed out, but I wasn't sure if it was yet or not, and you were looking for space and just kind of right at the beginning of your journey. But I know that your plan for this probably started long before that. So can you tell us kind of where that seed started and the steps you took to get to where we are today?
Yeah, so I was born back in 1990. No, I'm just kidding. Well, that part is true. But growing up, I had a really close relationship with my grandmother. And in 10 days, it'll be 10 years since she's passed. And she was my inspiration for a lot of things. We'd always be cooking together. We'd always be hanging out. And I'd always be going over there for my whole childhood, basically. And so we were very close. And so when I decided to go to culinary school, and I was like, you're the reason why. She couldn't even believe it. She's like, no, I'm not. No, I'm not. And then culinary school, there's a little bit in there where we talk about wine and service and all that. And then through that, I was able to do an internship at Disney World. And at Disney World, I got selected to work the Food and Wine Festival. And I didn't really know much about wine at that point. I was pretty freshly 21. But it was interesting to me, and the meld of the wine and the food together. So from that point on, I was always kind of like, oh, I like how these work together. and when you're young, you're like, maybe I just like to drink, I don't know. But then you realize, yeah, they do go very well hand in hand. But after I left Disney World, I did go to Miami for a while. I was a private chef down there. And I didn't really love living in Florida. So when I moved home, my family has ownership in Seven Sisters. So I started working there. And, you know, just starting out, you're like, yeah, I'll just do this temporarily. And then 12 years goes by and you're like, wow, how much more Busch Light can I touch in my day? So I knew that I wanted to focus a little bit more on wine and make that be my purpose. I had taken some sommelier classes at that point. I read wine books in my spare time. I'm always just looking up wine things, and I do it because I find it interesting. Wine is one of those things where you're never gonna know everything there is to know about wine, and I love like an endless, you know, it's just romantic. You'll never ever get to the end of it. And you get to learn all these different languages and hopefully travel to all these different places and experience all these different cultures. So it's just a very cool, like all-encompassing deal. And so when I left Seven Sisters, I was at a crossroads with wine bar would have been the ultimate goal. Like, I know I want this in 5, 10, 15, 20 years, but maybe I should, you know, be a wine distributor. Maybe I should, and I think a lot of us, we kind of downsize our goals and, you know, maybe I'm not ready for that, or we get a little imposter syndrome. And so I really had to work on talking a lot nicer to myself and being the positive light that I needed, you know, like how Sarah talks to me. She's like, you can do this. And Amy too, yeah, you got a goal, get it done. And I'm like, so it is true. You can put your mind to it. And like now it's like, wow, this has been going for so long. But in reality, I think I met with Amy in December, probably Sarah in January, bought the building in March and was open by June. And it does move so quickly. And yeah, and then you wake up and you're like, wow, I did it. I'm living the dream, and now I just got to keep that dream alive. So, yeah.
And when you were at Seven Sisters, you did a lot of wine classes, right? And you were writing for all these wine magazines, and there's a little bit more there that you did.
Yeah, whenever I tell people, I'm like, yeah, I work at a liquor store. My friends are like, you don't just work at a liquor store, like, get real. But no, I love events, and I love like the wine education part, so I definitely made a big choice to do a lot more of those out there. And even this week here, we did our first wine event this last Monday, and we had a winemaker from Washington. It was a really great turnout, really great event. And I think the more any of us learn about wine, the more comfortable we will be, because it's intimidating, it's kind of scary, but when you have winemakers telling you, it's not that hard, just drink what you like, it just makes it a little bit more relaxed, and you hear their stories. And that's what connects us to the wine, is the stories. And so, like the events, the education, that part is, I like that part. And then with the wine writing, I think it was for like 10 years I wrote for Inspired Home Magazine, their wine reviews. And at first it was just like, oh yeah, this would be fun. And then it turned into like a really good marketing thing, because people were constantly reading in the magazines, where can I get this wine? I love the way you wrote about it. And so, yeah, you're just kind of like influencing people that are maybe not around here, but they're trusting you with this. And especially getting into wine at such a young age, there's been a lot of times even at the liquor store where I've had older coworkers where someone would come in and be like, I want help picking out wine, and I'd be like, hey, I'd love to help you, and they're like, no, I want him, because he's older and you think that he has more experience. And so kind of reverse ageism, where she can't be trusted with wine, she doesn't have enough age or experience, you know, she's not there yet. But now I feel like people trust me. I mean, they better now, but it's been cool gaining that trust, and like sending people home with bottles and having them come back, oh, I love that, or seeing repeat customers in here, I really enjoyed this wine, like I'd like to try something else. And it's just like opening up, you know, like it's not scary, and it's very approachable if you just start slow. Yeah.
And when you came in and met with me, I mean, your passion was clearly there, which is huge, because running a business isn't easy. And so at the end of the day, you need your passion to keep you going. But I remember what really struck me was you were talking about your classes that you had done with people, and your dream for this wine bar was not just a wine bar. It was to build a community, and you wanted to make sure that like everything was accessible to get in for people, and that you had NA options so that no matter who you are, everyone has this space to connect and, you know, take a break after a long day. And so that just really struck me, and I remember that was part of me being like, you've got this, because you had built that community, and that was so important. And I really think, especially in Detroit Lakes, that will gain a following for you. So can you walk us through maybe like the ups and downs a little bit of what it's like to open a business?
Well, it's scary, but super rewarding, and throughout every part of the process, I feel like you're testing yourself, and I'd be putting in installation being like, I don't think I'm supposed to be doing this, I don't know what I'm doing here. I'd be hammering things in, and then I'd be doing the business side of things, and I'd be meeting with lawyers, and just things that I hadn't had to do or hadn't had to rely on myself. You know, at Seven Sisters we had a team, so if I was busy, there'd be someone to do, but here it's me, and if I don't do it, it's not getting done. And I do have good staff now, but I still am not really relying on the business side of things yet. I feel like there will be some time where I might need to do that for sure. But yeah, it's scary, but it's when it's something you're really passionate about, and you switch that mindset, it's like there isn't anything that's going to get in your way and deter you from doing it, or kind of change your trajectory, because the worst that's going to happen, okay, I fail, then I get to go to my second option and do that, but at least I tried. And I think that that's the biggest thing, is just taking the leap, and at least you tried. And this community is so welcoming, and that's why having all of these inclusive options with the non-alcoholic, the beer, the wine. I don't have a full liquor license, but it's been really nice, and like the feedback of people that aren't drinkers, or, you know, just like to go out and not have a drink every time, or, you know, pregnant friends or friends in recovery. It doesn't feel weird coming in here, because they're just happy to be with their friends in this cozy environment and have options. And it's fun to hear people get excited about that side, because definitely it's a much bigger shift in the younger generations to not drink. People ask me all the time, are you worried about wine going away? I'm like, well, wine's been around for a very long time. So I think we'll be okay there. We just need people to keep drinking it. But no, and having accessibility routes was very important to me too. At Seven Sisters, it's mostly accessible, but they couldn't make it up to my classes, and I didn't want to turn anyone away from that experience who really wanted to be a part of it.
So I have to ask you, how did your experience with Pitch 412 help for this? For anyone who doesn't know, she won our Pitch 412 Shark Tank competition. She did a fantastic job.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that was a really cool experience. Probably came at a worse time for me, doing the middle of construction, trying to open this business there. It's like, hey, you got this, you can do it. But very encouraging. Project 412 team is so encouraging. But it was super cool, and especially as someone who is starting a new business, I know some of my competitors in there had established businesses, or they've been doing it a little bit, but for a fresh business, they give you a lot of tools. So it's not just like, get on stage and work this out, you figure it out. There's a lot of learning and, you know, classes and seminars, I don't know how you want to put them, but some training videos that they kind of set you up with, and she's always available for questions. But my reasoning for doing it was probably more for the publicity at the time I was opening it. But in reality, it did make me step out of my comfort zone. I'm not a public speaker, but it forced me out of my comfort zone at a time where I really needed to be pushed, which was exceptionally cool in that environment. And it was a great time to do it, because it was right at the launch of my business, and it couldn't have turned out any better because I won. But I definitely don't remember being on stage. I blacked that out. But it was super cool, and honestly, I feel like any way that you can be involved with Project 412 in any capacity is amazing. They've done so many cool things for this community and will continue to do things. And I know I talked to other people who are like, yeah, I've sat down with them and spitballed some ideas back and forth. I don't know when these ladies have time to get anything done, but they do a lot. So it's very cool to be a part of, and I made some cool friends in the process. And yeah, it's very genuine support. I don't feel like in any other little communities you have such genuine support as Detroit Lakes does, and people really want you to succeed, and people really want, you know, everybody here to win, and which is the coolest thing. And I think that is, you know, Project 412 is kind of pushing new things and new fun stuff to succeed. So
Thanks. And just so you know, she did an awesome job and hardly needed any of the stuff. She just had it together, and she does an amazing job public speaking. And I may have coerced her twice to do it now. All right, we're gonna open it up for questions.
Hi, Chelsey. During the Project 412, the pitch, you put forth sort of a business case in terms of what you needed in terms of per ticket average and all that.
Yeah.
How is the business going in that regard?
you know, it's going good. Like any business, you're gonna have extremely busy days and slower days, but all the days in between are a pretty consistent kind of game here. And I've been doing a lot of things on Mondays and Tuesdays throughout the summer when we haven't been opening to push a little bit more revenue in. About to get our apparel launched here, that'll push a little bit more, and all the events and stuff. So I do feel like it's gone as well as I could have expected it from the beginning point. I think anyone gets nervous about how the seasons will change their business, but it is such a cozy space, and I think people will have a lot of fun with it year round. So I'm hopeful that it will stay at a consistent pace.
Anyone else? You've got a pattern.
In your preparation for the presentation at Project 412, did that change your business plan as you started to look deeper at your presentation and think, maybe I should do this different now that I think about it a little deeper? Did the business plan drive your presentation, or did the presentation help to drive your business plan?
That's a great question. I feel like it kind of just streamlined things. I want to say before the pitch competition, my mind was more like a big board of all these things I wanted to accomplish, and then working on that, it kind of just put everything, the pieces where I needed them to lay to look exactly how I needed it to look. And it actually got me thinking more into the future too, with what could the possibilities be like in 5, 10, 20 years. So I feel like it actually made me feel more comfortable as a business owner after going through that process, because the things that were just like flying around in your brain, you were able to just kind of like focus, absolutely. So yeah, thanks ladies for that.
Chelsey, I love your space. It's just so fun to see it come to life. And my question to you is, with your culinary school experience, and you have some appetizers and nashes here, do you have other plans to expand your food offerings?
Yes, I do. So probably in opening this business, working with the health department was my least favorite part, but I understand it and why they do everything they do. I have a very small kitchen, and anyone that wants to peek at it through that window before you leave, go for it. But right now I just have like 2 800-degree pizza ovens, some cooler space. I have electric cooktop that I can move around, but it's very small back there. So in order for me to even like serve soup here, I have to move up a category at the health department size. So I'm trying to figure out ways to keep it fun and do different things without getting to them breathing down my back more than I need them to. But I do want to add some dessert options. I'm planning on switching up the menu, couple weeks ago, but I'm a busy girl, so it's gotten pushed back a little bit. But there's another flatbread coming, and then some other appetizers. And yeah, I do want to kind of filter things out. I'd love to work with, you know, some more local farm to table stuff and kind of just ease into a little bit, still keep it approachable and light. And, you know, it's not, you don't come in here to have a heavy meal. You want to have some bites and some wine and giggle and laugh and read, have your book club, right? So it's, it'll still stay in that realm, but like when I was first thinking, I'm like, wow, it would be fun to do like flights of soup, and then the health department's like, well, you might want to think about that, and I'm like, okay. So it's just figuring out what I can do, and I mean, some things are like, you're gonna ask for forgiveness after the fact, but so you get in trouble with them on some of that, but yeah, so I do want to expand it, and I feel like since I am comfortable in that realm, it's been fun to kind of play around with, well, what can I get away with in this tiny little room back here, but yeah.
I remember you mentioning at the 412 pitch that you went and looked at a variety of wine bars all over. What was your inspiration for this? What did you like out of the other wine bars that said, oh, I want this here? I mean, can you walk us through that, the picking of your atmosphere?
Yeah, absolutely. So that was a pretty fun part of the process, was checking out wine bars. And my favorite one, if you guys ever get to it, it's called Babbitt's in Sauk Center. It's not on the main street, it's one street over. But it's smaller than this even, and it kind of felt like a little bit of a library in there, and it felt like you were in a city. It didn't feel like you were in a small town. So I liked that vibe of that, but I wanted it to feel very comfortable. And I wanted it to feel like I was entertaining people at home, or, you know, that they felt like they could relax like they were at home. And some people, they don't want to leave. They spend 5-6 hours in here. They just love it here. So, but I feel like that's the wine bar that I didn't like gave me more like maybe like a church basement feel, where it wasn't a personality. It didn't make you feel cozy. It didn't make you feel like you wanted another glass. It didn't feel welcoming and all consuming like that. But yeah, I feel like lots of Pinterest, lots of looking around online. And I'd bring, my dad was kind of the main construction person here, so I'd bring him ideas and he'd be like, oh, that's a stretch, we're not doing that. Or he'd be like, yeah, that's cool. And sometimes it would be exactly what I wanted, and sometimes it'd be like, well, we could do this, and I'd end up liking that version better anyway. So, but yeah, cozy, you know, nice atmosphere. And I get asked about this paint color a lot. It's called Cypress Gardens, by the way, Dutch Bros. But that day that I had to go pick out the paints, it was, you know, we need to get this done, we need to get this done. You need to go pick out paint right now. And so I went in there, I was like, fine. And I just like grabbed a slip out of there, I said, I'll take this one. And I loved it, and I still love it, but that could have been a horrible, horrible mistake. So yeah, I guess, and people are like, oh, how'd you pick this or this? I don't know, I just liked it and hoped everything would work when I put it all together. And it has, and things will keep evolving. I know Linda and I talked earlier today about, you know, maybe doing some pop-up galleries and, you know, doing more local stuff in here too. So there's a lot we can do in this space, and it's small but mighty. So stay tuned.
Very simple one.
Remind us why the name Clarity.
Sure. So clarity is actually a wine term. It's what you see in your glass. And in the wine world, we judge it on like a plus and a minus section. So it'd be like medium plus would just be like, it's a little bit darker, a little bit more bold. You know, if it's medium minus or minus minus, then it's going to be very light, very see-through. So it actually is a wine term, but more all-encompassingly, it's, I've had a ton of clarity getting to this point in my life, and I think every day we gain more and more clarity. And so that it's kind of a lot of different things. And also with the non-alcoholic selection, we have some clear-headed cocktails, so we have that. But there's a lot of people that come in here and they're like, Clarity, that's a funny name for a wine bar. We're not going to be very clear when we live here. So however you want to take it. If you think it's a funny little joke, it's a funny little joke. But it definitely has some substance to it, and it's kind of like anything, right? When you pick something or see something or make a decision, and then all of a sudden you just start seeing it everywhere in your life. Any time I'm watching a show now, I'm like, clarity. Maybe I've never even, it's like I've never even heard this word before until this last year, but yeah, everybody says it, so yeah, it's kind of fun.
Well, before we wrap up, what is one thing that we can do to support you?
I would say I'm not the only small business in this town, but with all of us, I think we've all seen some really cool things come to this area and then shut down. My friend Alicia just had to shut her store down downtown, Beautiful Junk, and it was amazing how many people after she shut down were like, wow, I love that place. I wish you could have stayed open. I really loved going there. But she needed that support while she was open, not after the fact. And so I feel like every time you're thinking about, wow, I really like that place, whether it's me, Bucks Mill, wherever, like, go out, support them, go to Red Willow, go to any of these places. Every time you feel that little thing pop in your mind, it's something inside you that wants to support the community. And if you wait until somebody has to shut their doors and then you can't get a reservation at Blackboard, that's me, so then it's different. So it's hard. So I think that if you like something and you want to see it grow in your community, keep going there. Go to your coffee shops, go to any establishment that we have here. We have a really cool community. But yeah, not just me, everybody. It's just, yeah, you want to support, drink wine. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's thank Chelsey for her presentation.
Thank you guys for coming.